Disclaimer: the following program is designed to offend, provoke, and challenge your religious sensibilities. It contains content that will likely offend anyone who holds religion sacred. This is for those with thick skin or a taste for the harsh truth. If you're easily offended or cherish your religious views, please turn off now. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. You have been warned.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cage of Chaos, the arena of apocalyptic mayhem. This is Thunderdome. Behold, the place where armchair theologians meet their doom. Welcome to Thunderdome.
I know, that was a lot, but trust me, it's still somehow more coherent than Genesis 14. Welcome to Troll the Verse, the show where we roast scripture until it begs for mercy. We've got full playlists for Genesis, Matthew, Revelation, and now the Book of Mormon, so if you want to see how that holds up, check the description. And don't like, comment, or subscribe unless you've personally taken 318 random guys, fought an army that just conquered multiple nations and somehow won. Otherwise, you're just not on Abraham's level. Today's target, Genesis 14, which abruptly morphs into an ancient war drama. Expect cameo appearances from random kings, one improbable rescue mission by a militia that shouldn't exist, and a priestly figure so mysterious he might as well be an alien. Let's go. All right, so we're kicking it off with a clash of ancient royalty. Chedorlaomer, the big boss from Elam, Amraphel, maybe Hammurabi, maybe not, who really cares? Arioch, which is some random king in some random place. Tidal, king of nations, which is the vaguest name ever, versus Berer, the king of Sodom, Birsha, the king of Gomorrah, and a few lesser-known city-states. They've all gathered in the valley of Siddim, the Salt Sea region. For 12 years, Sodom and friends paid tribute to Chedorlaomer. In the 13th, they said no more taxes, so naturally, the big dogs show up to crush them. In this chapter, Sodom and Gomorrah get completely humiliated, looted, not leveled. The enemy kings seize their wealth, their food, and a bunch of captives, but the cities themselves remain standing. No flames, no sulfur, just basically an 8-man style smash and grab. So when Genesis 19 comes along and God rains fire on them, that's the first and only time they're truly obliterated. Here in chapter 14, they just get ransacked. Somehow they bounce back with no real explanation. The text simply moves on. Then we get this phrase, the Valley of Siddim, which is the Salt Sea. Some later traditions claim Sodom's fall created the Dead Sea, but Genesis never actually says that. The text already calls it the Salt Sea, implying it was always salty, always miserable. Throw in tar pits and sinkholes, and you've got the worst battlefield in the ancient world. Basically, I see this as them fighting in a place where the ground might swallow them and everything smells like sulfur. Obviously, nothing could go wrong here. Here's where it gets extra dumb. In verse 4, Sodom and Gomorrah, supposedly the most rebellious, sinful, anti-God cities ever, were perfectly fine paying taxes for 12 years. No problem, no resistance. Then, out of nowhere, in year 13, they just stop. Why? No idea. The text doesn't say. Did it take them over a decade to realize they were being taxed? Did some official in Sodom wake up and go, wait, why are we doing this? Or did they just get bored of being vassals? And if Sodom was already so irredeemably wicked, why didn't Yahweh smite them now instead of waiting for their tax evasion? And here's where it starts looking like a biblical lesson on why you should always pay up. Because notice, Yahweh doesn't punish Sodom for its sin here. No fire, no brimstone, no divine judgment. But the second they stop paying their tribute, now they're in trouble. And of course, Chedorlaomer and his allies take their sweet time, waiting another year before finally deciding to do something about it. Because nothing says strong leadership like a 14-year delay on dealing with rebellion. Message received, ancient world, stop paying taxes, and an army will come knocking. Except, to be clear, it never actually says taxes. Scholars just think this was about taxes. All the text says is that they served Chedorlaomer, but how? Tribute, forced labor, military service? No clue. So what exactly were they rebelling against? And why after 12 years? Did they think Chedorlaomer would just forget about them? And once again, Yahweh does nothing. Because in the Bible, judgment isn't about morality, it's all about timing. Chedorlaomer's coalition steamrolls various groups, like the Rephaim and Emim, possibly giants, before turning on Sodom and Gomorrah, leading to a three-phase war. Phase 1, the enemy sweeps through Canaan, crushing smaller nations. Phase 2, Sodom and its allies try to put up a defense and fail miserably. Phase 3, their kings flee toward the tar pits in verse 10. Some fall there, but the text never says they die, just that they fell, which could mean slipping, getting stuck, or just running into the area. Meanwhile, the rest of the army scatters. With zero resistance left, the enemy waltzes into Sodom and Gomorrah, loots everything, and takes all the people, including Abraham's nephew Lot. It's not two conquests of Sodom, it's one big war with multiple steps. The city isn't destroyed, just completely stripped of its resources and people, yet by Genesis 19, they're somehow back to full-blown partying like nothing happened. Genesis 13 says Lot chose land near Sodom. By Genesis 14, he's moved in. By Genesis 19, still there. 3 separate chances to leave, and 3 times he stays. He's that guy who moves into the worst neighborhood, sees it getting raided every weekend, and still says, but the rent is so cheap. Then he acts shocked when things go badly. No sympathy, Lot. You brought this on yourself. Honestly, we could probably dig into this more, but I have a new theory about Melchizedek, and I want to get to that section. If you haven't seen my Melchizedek video, I'll put it at the end of the video in one of the suggested videos if you're interested in watching it. Word gets back to Abraham that his nephew Lot, along with all of Sodom's people and wealth, have been captured. So naturally, Abraham does what any rational person would do. He grabs 318 guys who, let's be real, are probably just shepherds and hired hands, chases down a battle-hardened superpower army that just conquered multiple nations, launches a night attack with zero mention of divine intervention, somehow wins. The coalition that steamrolled half of Canaan? Completely humiliated by 318 farmers with sticks. The most insane part? This wasn't just about rescuing Lot. Abraham saves all of Sodom's people and their wealth in verse 16, meaning Sodom's entire population survives thanks to Abraham. Sodom's king, who fled earlier, gets his throne back. Abraham doesn't just recover Lot, he restores everything that was taken. And then, as soon as Abraham returns, the king of Sodom should be thanking him. Right? Except, before he gets the chance, some random guy named Melchizedek shows up out of nowhere. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, hath brought out bread and wine, and he is priest of God Most High, El Elyon. And just like that, Melchizedek pops into existence, no setup, no introduction, just an instant drop-in. He's called the king of Salem, likely early Jerusalem, and a priest of El Elyon, God Most High, but not explicitly Yahweh. He strolls in with bread and wine, blesses Abraham, collects a tithe, and vanishes into the abyss. Naturally, this raises the question, who on earth is this guy? A pre-incarnate Jesus? Some Christians say yes, but there's no direct proof. An angel? The Dead Sea Scrolls call him some cosmic judge? A Canaanite priest? Then why does Abraham, God's chosen, act like he's the underdog here? An alien? He appears from nowhere, does a cryptic ritual, and leaves without a trace. But here's where things get really weird. Melchizedek might not have existed at all, at least not in the form we have now. There's a strong possibility he was actually the king of Sodom before the text got edited. Now you're probably saying, wait, Melchizedek equals king of Sodom? No way, I know, it sounds insane, but let's see why it might not be so crazy. Genesis 14 already introduces a bunch of kings, including the king of Sodom. Verse 17, the king of Sodom shows up to meet Abraham. Verses 18 through 20, suddenly Melchizedek jumps in, blesses Abraham, takes a tithe. Verse 21, the king of Sodom resumes talking like nothing happened. So was he just standing there awkwardly while Melchizedek hogged the spotlight? If you remove verses 18 through 20, the scene flows perfectly. Abraham meets Sodom's king, they chat, done. The Melchizedek cameo slices the narrative in half. Now pay attention, verse 20 says he gave him a tithe of all. Who gave what to whom? In Hebrews 7, the New Testament claims Abraham gave Melchizedek a tithe, but if Melchizedek was actually the king of Sodom, then the tithe might have gone the other way. Sodom's king handing over tribute to Abraham, acknowledging a debt. That lines up perfectly with verse 21, where the king of Sodom immediately asks for his people back. He's in no position to demand anything else. Basically, thanks for saving my city, now can I at least have my citizens? Is Salem just a corruption of Sodom? The Hebrew words are pretty close. Some scholars like W.F. Albright suggest Melech Shelemo could mean a king allied to him, not necessarily a separate city's ruler. So the entire conversation might always have been with the king of Sodom. People like to forget Abraham straight up rescued Sodom here. The city lost a war, had its wealth plundered, and its people taken captive. The king of Sodom fled, leaving everything in ruins. Then Abraham shows up, gathers an army, attacks the enemy kings, wins back all the stolen goods and prisoners. So if Melchizedek equals king of Sodom, then him blessing Abraham in verse 20, blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand, is just a fancy way of saying, dude, you saved my entire kingdom. So you might be asking, why rewrite the king of Sodom into a righteous priest named Melchizedek? Well, sit and think about it for a minute. Psalm 110 verse 4 and Hebrews 7 hail Jesus as a priest after the order of Melchizedek. If Melchizedek was originally the king of Sodom, a city God later nukes, yikes, that's not a great look for Jesus. Some scribe probably went, we can't have Jesus associated with Sodom, so they split the king of Sodom into two figures, the doomed king who gets overshadowed by his city's downfall, and this brand new Melchizedek, who's all holy and mysterious. Hence why Melchizedek only reappears in the Psalms and the New Testament as some eternal godly figure. If Melchizedek is really just the king of Sodom under a new name, then the entire Hebrews 7 argument crumbles. Hebrews claims Abraham tithed to Melchizedek, proving Melchizedek outranked him. But if it was tribute from the king of Sodom to Abraham, the meaning flips. Jesus' priesthood is now tied to a rewritten Canaanite ruler from a doomed city. Not exactly the best foundation for a holy, eternal priesthood. The simplest reading of Genesis 14 is that Melchizedek wasn't there originally. Once you see him as a sanitized version of the king of Sodom, every piece falls into place. Tithe? Probably tribute to Abraham, not from him. Awkward interruption? Gone. Abraham's refusal to accept it makes sense. He doesn't want to owe Sodom anything, but that absolutely wrecks the New Testament's theology, where Melchizedek must be a separate, legit priest king to validate Jesus. Jesus is in the order of Melchizedek. The next time somebody proudly quotes that, try asking, you mean the king of Sodom? Because if the king of Sodom got a theological makeover, then linking Jesus' priesthood to that is a huge problem. Mystery solved? I think so. This Melchizedek puzzle bothered me for ages. Now it feels painfully obvious. He was just the king of Sodom rewritten. If that ruffles some feathers, blame the scribes who tried to clean up the association. I'm just pointing it out. And if you're still a little hesitant, let me cap it off for you right at the end here. Look at verse 21 again. And the king of Sodom saith unto Abram, give to me the persons and the substance, take to thyself. Right after the supposed Melchizedek cameo, the actual king of Sodom speaks, wanting just the people, not the land or riches. Abram's response is basically, I don't want a dime from you. I only want my wealth to come from Yahweh, not some cursed city. What's this substance the king of Sodom references? Likely the same wealth Melchizedek had just offered in the verse right before it, in verse 20. If they're the same person, it fits perfectly. The king of Sodom tries to give Abraham a tribute. Abraham declines, so no one can say Sodom made him rich. Hence, Hebrews 7 is built on a misreading. The text never says Abraham tithed to Melchizedek. It implies the opposite. And if that's true, then Jesus' entire Melchizedek priesthood is based on a Canaanite king Abraham flat out rejected. That's a theological mess for Christianity. So yes, if Melchizedek was actually the king of Sodom, it pulls the rug out from under the New Testament claim that Jesus is a priest in that order. Instead, it means Jesus is connected to a cursed ruler from a city God destroyed. So that's awkward. That's all, folks. I know some will freak out in the comments, but come on, this theory solves every hole in Genesis 14. Don't be mad at me for pointing it out. Complain to whoever decided to turn the king of Sodom into a righteous priest to boost their theology. It's not my fault the Bible's editing got sloppy. Now, here's where things go from messy to straight up suspicious. Because I said, well, it would make sense if this were true that we'd have multiple translations, and that one of them has to say this is the king of Sodom. Because wouldn't it be nice if we had an older version of Genesis 14 that could confirm or deny all this? Well, the Dead Sea Scrolls should have been our answer. But guess what's missing? Genesis 14 isn't in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Neither is Genesis 19, the chapter where Sodom and Gomorrah actually get wiped out. Other Genesis sections are missing too, but these just happen to be some of the most controversial ones. Just a random coincidence? Maybe. I don't think so, though. For me, this is pretty much solved. And whether this sounds like conspiracy or not, the Vatican literally controlled the Dead Sea Scrolls for decades. When the scrolls were found in 1947, they were immediately locked away under the control of Catholic scholars at the École Biblique. For more than 40 years, the scrolls were withheld from the public until a group of independent scholars hacked the system and forced their release in 1991. To this day, some scroll fragments are still unpublished or were lost before anyone could study them. So, if an early version of Genesis didn't mention Melchizedek at all, or had a different take on Sodom's destruction, we'd never know, which I find super suspicious. All right, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.